Welcome to Microsoft Community Insight Podcast, where we share insights from community experts to stay up to date in Microsoft. My name is Nicholas, and I'll be your host today. In this podcast, we will dive into Microsoft Fabric and data analytics using AI. But before we get started, want you to follow us on social media so you never miss an episode. It helps us reach more amazing people like yourself. Today, we have a special guest called Javier Helvigas. Sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Could you please introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Nicholas. Thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Javier Villegas. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I work with SQL Server and data platform since many years. I'm Microsoft MVP in the data platform category. And well, today we're going to be talking a little bit about Microsoft Fabric.
Okay, cool. So could you explain to us like what do you do on daily basis, like as a data platform, whether it's at work or as MVP?
Yeah, my background is mainly SQL Server. Right? I started
Yeah.
with SQL Server 6.5 more than 30 years ago, right? So I've been through every single version, migration, on-premise, clusters, cloud, etc.
Yeah.
And yeah, now switching, basically not switching but combining with this new analytic tool, Microsoft Fabric. So it's mainly everything related to the Microsoft data platform stack. I also part of a bunch of community from other database engine, but mainly I focus on the Microsoft stack.
Okay. So what do you use Microsoft Fabric at work or just SQL mainly?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I use Fabric on a daily basis. Okay? As MVP, we have the possibility to have early access to Microsoft Fabric. So we've been testing it myself.
Yeah.
Personally, I've been testing it since a couple of years, actually. And well, nowadays I'm using it in for mission critical analytic workload.
Okay, brilliant. Before we dive into the fabric, can we just want to start into very basic. So what's Microsoft Fabric and what's the key components is it?
Okay, well, let's start from the beginning with a little bit of history, right?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, as I said a couple of years ago, it was presented as a private preview for the data platform community, right? It was a brand new concept, right? As a whole, basically because the key, let's say, factor of Microsoft Fabric is that is SaaS, right? Software as a
Yeah.
service, meaning that you connect to Fabric through the portal and you don't have to leave it, right? You don't need any piece of software, you don't need any virtual machine, anything, right? You can do any analytical solution, and we're going to dive into this through the conversation from end to end, right? We can ingest data from any source, right? On premise, cloud, even different clouds, right?
Yeah.
We can storage and process this data, and we can, create the dashboards and reports with Power BI. Right? So that's mainly the most important thing. Back in 2023, it was presented as public preview, right? And in 2022, in 2023, during Ignite, at the end of the year, it was presented as general availability, right? So everybody was able to jump into it. Microsoft is giving away a lot of trial periods. So, if you want to get involved, if you would like to start testing and doing proof of concept of your own things, right? You can do it kind of for free, right? So that is super cool, right? Um, One of the big difference also of this is, since it is a platform a software as a service offering, right? And as I said, you don't have to install anything to start with, right? If you have a project or if you have something that you would like to validate, in the past, you had to buy the hardware, get the software, do the
Yeah.
installation, spend some money, right? Big money, actually, to do the setup, basically to validate what you would like to do, right? That's going to take time, effort, and money, right? And then let's say after a while, you were ready to deploy your project, right? And you should be back in the days quite careful to measure the hardware that you need for your environment very well. Otherwise, if you run out of resources, processing power, storage, whatever, you have to go to the vendor and buy, right? With a SaaS solution like this, which you can scale at any time, you can, put whatever you need as a concept in 5 minutes, and let's say no more than a day, you may have your validation ready to go, right? And when and as I said, for free, completely free, right? And when it's ready, you can just move it to production and go to a paid offering.
So is there no cost involved because you mentioned free?
Mhm. You have 60 days trial. Uh, there are some minor things that you won't be
Yeah.
able to use, for example, Copilot, but as I defined it at the beginning, you will be able to ingest data, process and store data, and create your Power BI report, right? And with that, you can do the validation of what you need to do. So let's say that you have to do an analytical project. For example, really a normal data warehouse, right? That when you
Yeah.
get your data from multiple sources, on-premise or sources in the cloud, you don't need any connector, right? From what is called, the pipelines on on the ingestion part for Fabric, you connect and you get it right away. For the storage part, and that part of the ingestion, let me go back a second, is what it used to be, let's say, this component in Azure that we used to
Yeah.
have, which is the pipeline, right? Data factory, right? So Fabric actually is something that is new as a concept, but it's not new in terms of the component. What do I say this? Because before Fabric, right, Microsoft had in the data platform in Azure, you had Data Factory to create your pipelines and get the data from multiple sources. You had Azure Synapse Analytics, in where you can, store the data using Synapse, right? And process using T-SQL or even using Spark, R, Scala, right? And then you have Power BI, right, to connect to the synapsing and present your report, right? That was available, as I said, but if you think about it, it was a little bit complex to set up all this in place. Why I'm saying so? Because you know that in Azure you have to do all the connectivity, the wiring
Yeah.
and the security, right? So you have three different services: Data Factory, Synapse, and Power BI. You have to involve your system team to, generate the networking, do all the links, etc., right? Then another thing is that for the billing, you have to pay for the usage of the data factory pipeline. You have to pay for what you spin off in Synapse, even if it was a serverless or a dedicated pool, and then Power BI. So the billing was really, really complicated, right? Besides that, Synapse used to have well, actually still have, because in fact this is still alive. It has its own proprietary storage format from Microsoft, right? It was from Microsoft.
Okay.
So now in Fabric, you can do exactly the same, right? All in one box. You don't need to involve any connectivity because it's all the same, right? The ingestion, the storage and processing, and the end result with Power BI, right? And the billing is way more simple because you have capacity. You have multiple capacities that you will choose, right? So you pay for that capacity. So at the end of the month, you know what you're gonna pay for. Right?
Yeah, it
So
sounds like
very,
it's
very
it's
simple.
it sounds like it's all in one solution that you just use that integrate with data factory, Synapse and stuff. So you just go in one portal of like
That's correct. That's
Maxi
correct. And
Fabric,
way more simple than
everything.
before. All right, in
Okay.
all senses. All
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Another interesting thing of Microsoft Fabric is the way to storage the data. I just mentioned that in Synapse, Microsoft has its own proprietary storage format for the data.
Yeah.
Now, in Fabric, Microsoft has switched to an open standard of Delta Parquet, right? So, doing so, it's way more easy to interact with other solutions, right? Because it's using an open standard. Let me tell you
Okay.
something more. Within Fabric, there is this component which is called One Lake, right? Which is the storage part that you can use to have your data in, right? And share the data with different projects within the Fabric solution, right? This is just to do a simple comparison. This is like in Microsoft 365, in Microsoft Office, right? You have multiple components like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and you have one drive to store all the components and share it within, right? This is this similar concept, right? But for within Fabric. One leg, you get the data, you store it, and you can share the data with multiple projects without having to do any data duplication, right? That is super important because if you go back in time to where we used to have, the on-premise solution, let's say that within your company, you have your data set and you need to share it with a different area on your company, right? You have to make a copy. And you know what happens when you do, when you have two
Yeah.
copies of the data, you cannot trust any of them, right?
Sorry,
So
just
this
in
is quite
case
important to have a single one.
just in case no one's aware of it, what's One Lake? Can you explain
One
what's One
leg
Lake?
is this storage component within Fabric, in where you store the data that you get from the different sources, right? Using
Yeah.
Delta Parquet as a storage format, right? So let's say we will see it in a minute when I present it, right?
Yeah.
In the storage part, right? You will be able to create multiple data storage. For example, a data warehouse, which is mainly to have relational data, tables, foreign key, relationship, etc. And you can use mainly Transact SQL to work with this, right? You can also create a data lake, right? Which is basically to store any kind of data, relational, semi-relational, and with no schema at all, right? You can put files, you can put multiple, JSON files, for example. You can also create tables if you want, right? And everything is at the top of one lake, right? You can also create another kind of databases, like, for example, Custo for real-time analytics. You can also store your your tabular model, right? Like in analysis services. And the internal format to store the data here is now Delta Parquet. All right. One Lake also has this ability to, it's not only One Lake, it's Fabric as a whole. There is this component which is called shortcuts. What you can do with shortcuts, mainly, let's say that your company has certain data in a different cloud provider. Let's call it AWS or Google, right? Or even your on-prem data center, right? So instead of copying the data from the external cloud into one lake, you create a shortcut and you reference that table or that data from outside without having to copy, right? So within
Okay.
your
Wow.
project, right? Let's say that you write a notebook with Spark and you need to combine data from multiple sources, something that is in your local lakehouse, your warehouse, and through a shortcut to, for example, data in AWS, right? You can do it without data duplication and super fast, right? So
Yeah,
this is a nice component within the Fabric.
that's quite sweet. So in regarding to like data like Microsoft Fabric, is
Mhm.
there any use cases that is very good at, like that you use that work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do, as I mentioned, a traditional data warehouse, right? You can also use it for data engineering, right? Uh, to get data from multiple sources. You can also do machine learning. You can also do real-time analytics, meaning, like, for example, let's say you have events coming from sensors through Azure Event Hub
Okay.
or real-time analytics, right? You have a component which is the hub that will get those inputs, right, in real time, and you can do your analytic at the top of it, right? For example, let's say that you have a solution that is constantly sending information about temperatures, right? So you're gonna get this online, right? And then at the top of it, you can put the Power BI report, which now is part of Fabric, right? And you can do your dashboard with the real-time data, right?
Does it
Back in the
works with
days, say again.
does it work with App Insight as well? Azure App Insight or just Power
Yeah,
BI?
yeah, you can connect to App Insight through
Okay.
Gusto, for example, and get this real quick, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities through Fabric. Recently, Microsoft has announced, actually not so long ago, during the last Microsoft Ignite, right? They also have announced the possibility of creating an Azure, they call it SQL database on Fabric, right? So besides creating a lakehouse or a data
Yeah.
warehouse, right, you can create a SQL database and you can use your T-SQL knowledge to create store procedure, functions, trigger, right, and store your relational operational data within Fabric, which is super interesting, right? Is that data is constantly replicating or mirroring, as we call it, into one lake, right? And you can use this data to do analytics on your operational data without impacting the performance on your operational data. Let's say that you have an application for your clients, your sales, right? And you have
Yeah.
the stocks and the sales, right? And you have your application working, creating, doing insert, update, deletes on the SQL tables. In near real time, those insert, updates, deletes will be synchronized into one lake. And again, you can create a Power BI dashboard. At the top of it, you have your, your analytics based on real time data. Back in the days, we used to have what is called ETL, right? Extraction transformation load. So we connect to the operational data source once an hour, once every 6 hours, once a day, depending on our logic. We duplicate the data into it, right? And then we build the analytic at the top of it, right? So it was not real time. We had to wait every time that we run this ETL, right? Now you have the possibility to do it also with real-time data from operational data sources, right? Now with SQL Server, in the future, this might be other engines, right? So it's another flavor of SQL now in Fabric. You know that, well, SQL is actually the part I love the most, right? So
Yeah.
you have the SQL Server, you have Azure SQL with Azure SQL Database and managed instance, and now you have this offering to have the possibility of creating SQL databases in Fabric. So it's
Yeah.
really good.
So let's dive through the demo, and because for those who want it more practical experience of what's a fabric, Microsoft Fabric. So let's bring up your demo.
Okay, very good. This is my portal, right? So I'm connected into my portal, and here, let me see if I can spin up the zoom it so we can make it bigger. First of all, is using a lot of the concept that we carried from Power BI, right? So
Yeah.
here we have, when we go click on the Power BI icon, now we don't only have Power BI, we have many other use cases, as I was mentioning. Data Factory to do the ingestion, real-time analytics, data engineering, data science, data warehouse, the relational databases here, right? So we have multiple options, right? So what I'm gonna do first, I will go to, for example, data warehouse. And as you will see through all the demo, I will never leave the Fabric portal, right? And I will be able to do everything I need. So what I'm gonna do first is I will create a new workspace, right? The workspace is this logically grouping thing, right? Let's call it like a folder, for example, in where you will put all the components of your analytics project, right? So here I will call it workspace 01. You can put a description here. You can upload a file, an image if you want, and here you will assign the license, right? There are multiple types of license. I'm still using the trial, right? I have the 60-day trial, as you can see here at the top, right? So I will just hit apply, and what I will have is an empty workspace, no components at all, right? So I'm ready to start my project. So what can I do here? Well, I will go to new, and here I have all the components that I can do, that I can create with Microsoft Fabric. You see here data pipeline, which is the one that will help us to ingest data from the source. We have in the data store area, we can create a lakehouse, data warehouse, a SQL database, as I just mentioned recently, right? And also for the preparation part, we can do, for example, event stream or Spark Shop definition. We can also do machine learning with the ML model or the experiment, or create an empty notebook. And then there is this interesting component here that I haven't mentioned, which is activator. This is one of the components that is completely new. It was not before in let's say, the Azure stack, and it's now in Fabric. This is super cool because, with activator, what you can do, right? For example, as I mentioned before, with the real-time data that we can get through sensors, and going back to the same example, let's say that you are receiving information about your sensors that are sending temperatures, right? Constantly, every minute you have multiple sensors and sending temperatures, right? Let's say that you define a normal range of the temperatures, minimum and maximum. And you can define a rule in activator that, for example, say, hey, if we get 5 consecutive samples in where the temperature is above the maximum or below the minimum, just do an action, right? So send an email, send a team message, run a custom script, anything. That means that you don't have to be there just watching the report. As soon as the anomaly or the trigger that you define get executed, you're gonna get the action. This is really super cool. And then the visualization part, which is Power BI, right? So to start with, I will create a lakehouse, right? So a lakehouse is, again, as I said, the possibility to store any kind of data, relational, non-relational, no relational one. So I will call it lakehouse 01. And just like this, I just need to put the name, and right away I have my lakehouse. As you can see, the interface is switching to have everything I need, right? From to create a table, to upload files, or anything. Let me go back to my workspace. I will also go back to new, and along with the lakehouse, I will create a data warehouse, right? So call it warehouse. And again, the only thing I may have to do is put the name, nothing else on that. And again, the interface is switching to work on a warehouse. Now, as you can see, I can create new SQL queries, right, with T-SQL, etc. But as for now, it's completely empty, right? So I go back to my workspace. Now I have the lakehouse and the warehouse, completely empty, right? So what can I do next? Well, I need to get data, right? So I will go to pipeline. I will call it pipeline 1, for example, and right after, again, the interface will switch to what we are doing without leaving the portal, right? And it's going to give us a lot of possibilities to import data. I will go through, for example, one of the wizard, which is the copy data assistant, basically to get data from the source and store it into the destination with no many transformations in between, right? In order to do that, you have to connect to the source, right? And go to the destination, no more than that. And as you can see here, there are many possibilities to connect as data source. Microsoft, not Microsoft, relational, non-relational, everything. For example, Snowflake, Dataverse, SAP, you can connect to an FTP to get the files. You can connect to Oracle. You can connect to a MongoDB, right? And there are many of those, right? So again, remember, you don't have to install anything. No ODBC driver, no nothing. Everything you need is in here, right? So I will go here to this part, which is sample data. In the sample data, we have different data sources that we can use for this kind of demo, right? We have information for COVID, New York taxes, diabetes, public holidays, etc. So I will go to the COVID information, and we have several data sets in different formats. We can have it in CSV file, JSON, or Parquet. I will go to the Parquet. For example, what I'm going to get here is some sort of preview of what the data the data set has, right? So it's coming up with the preview. It's going to take a few seconds. So here I have some sort of preview. So I choose the source, right? Now I have to choose the destination. On the destination, I will choose, for example, the warehouse that I just created in the previous step, right? So we can either load that data to an existing table or create a brand new. In this case, I will create a new table, right? I will call it the schemas DBO, and I will call it COVID-19 data, right? Here we have the mapping of the source and the destination with column names and data types. We can do some transformation here. For example, if there are some columns that we don't want to transfer, we can remove it from here. If we want to do a data type change or something, we can do it in here, right? So finally, we do next, right? And we have the summary, and we have the option here, save and run, right? When we do save and run, is saving the pipeline so we can reuse it in the future, right? And it will run it right away. So here we have the pipeline. We see now that is in the queue, right? So then we'll switch to processing or in process, right? and in few seconds it will be complete, right? So then we will see what we have in complete. We can go dive deeper here and get more information about the execution, how long it's been running, etc., etc. So we see that the total duration for now is 31 seconds. Is moving on, right? So still in progress here.
Sorry,
And
do you know, like this Microsoft Fabric, is there any option that you can use to automate it? Or is it just
so
GUI based, platform based, software as a service based?
now you can interact with APIs for sure,
Yeah,
right? But at the moment of defining your, your work, your pipeline, your,
yeah,
let's say, the flow on your data is through the interface. Then to consume
okay,
the data from different sources, etc. Yeah, definitely it can be used through APIs. So
okay.
now is executed, is done, right? So if I go back to the warehouse, I will hit refresh here. I will see that I have my table now being COVID data, so I can go here and see it like uh, you know a table. I can even go to, for example, new SQL query, right? And I can use my SQL knowledge and do, for example, um, select start from DBO dot, and we have intelligence, and then I just go do run, so I can go get the top 10 if I need, right?
No,
Eventually I can use
it's quite
Copilot.
fast. It's quite fast. It's searching through all the docs, querying.
Yeah, I mean, the trial component is not, let's say, the faster one in terms of
Yeah.
capacity. And at the beginning, to warm up what is behind the thing, it may take a little bit more. But yeah, let's say you want to do select where ID equal to this specific ID, 50, 71, 76, 94. You just go here, run it, and you get your data, right? So this is super cool. Let me see if I have something here. 1 second, because I want to show you something else. Let's
Because
see.
because I mentioned before our conversation, you said you can use machine learning to integrate it with like AI as well.
Yeah, for
With Fabric.
example, if you go to your lakehouse, right, you can upload your files or create tables or anything, right? Then you can create, open or create, for example, a new notebook, and you can
Yeah.
use Python or Spark to work through the data in your lakehouse, right?
Okay.
Uh, and with that, you can even, call um, your machine learning algorithm to do, for example, forecast or whatever you need, and you can use it using Spark.
Okay.
Not quite different to what we have at the way, right? We can use PySpark. Uh, so here, multiple languages here. Let me make it bigger. Scala, Spark SQL, R, right? So you can train the data that you have within your lakehouse this way, right? And finally, another thing that we can do here, I go to my workspace, and we create the lakehouse, the data warehouse, and I can also go here and create the latest new thing, which is databases, right? Right. This is, as you can see here, is still in preview, right?
Okay.
But again, you go
Yeah.
here. Most difficult part here is just to set up the name, right? So here in a few seconds, you have a SQL database created, right? So if you go to Azure SQL Database or Managed Instance, you have to select your capacity, if it is serverless, if it is provisioning, the amount of cores, the disaster recovery, the high availability, several things that you have to go through in order to set up your database. In here, you just put create database and the name, and it will scale by itself, right? So you have a relational SQL database, operational. We can get sample data, for example, with the wizard, and you can do anything you need, right? And finally, when you have your data ingested into Fabric, right, you can do your queries, you can do your training of your ML model. You can also go back here to Power BI, connect to those sources, and create those reports for you, right? So, as I said at the beginning, this is an end-to-end solution, right? Ingest the data from any source, as you saw, all the many sources that are available, right? Store it in one lake through the lakehouse, data warehouse, or even a database, and then create your Power BI report to connect to it and show the dashboard, right? So it's all you need.
Okay.
So, and as you saw, in a minute without leaving the portal.
Yeah. How can people get access to this Fabric? Is it just through the website? Here
Well,
on the URL?
First of all, you have to be through the. You have to have an entry ID and a group, right? And then, or you can assign the permission at the capacity level and at the workspace level. Let's say I go back to my workspace here, workspace 01. I go here to manage access, right? And here I choose who can connect to the warehouse or the components underneath, right? So you can define a group here or individual accounts.
That's brilliant. So how can someone get started with Fabric? What's the best places for people to learn about it if they want to learn more?
Yeah. Microsoft is pushing hard on Microsoft Fabric. So the starting point is aka.ms/fabric. That's the starting point in where you can go to the option to create your trial, in where you can be redirected to the Microsoft Learn page, right? In the Microsoft Learn page, there is a nice concept called Learn Together, Microsoft Fabric Edition, in where that was delivered back in January, February 2024. There were like 9 episodes in where it was covering everything in Fabric, the basis, ingestion, lakehouse, data warehouse, notebooks, real-time analytics, etc., 9 different episodes in English and in Spanish. It is available in YouTube, right? So you have all the training you need. Recently, we did also one quite similar for SQL databases in Fabric, right? There are a bunch of webinars, there are books. So all the resources that you need are aka.ms/Fabric. Microsoft also has created a certification for Fabric, the DP 600, right? In where several sessions on this Microsoft Learn Together initiative were also focusing on the exam, the DP 600 exam, right? So there is a certification which is generally available, the DP 600, right? Recently, Microsoft is promoting a new one, which is still not fully available, which is the DP 700, which is more targeting to data engineering within Fabric. So, ton of resources, free, right? So you can even get several initiatives to complete training, and when you complete the training, you even gonna get discounts for the certification exam. So super cool. So if you are into the data analytics, if you would like to, validate your need, your project in a matter of minutes, you have everything you need in here.
So let's talk a bit more about the community, the data community. Yeah, so I know aside from like certifications, you can just network and be involved with the community. Can you explain more about the different community that they have in data?
Yeah, absolutely. So, myself, I'm from Argentina, South America. My main language is Spanish, right? We have our own user group, SQL Argentina, and where we cover the Microsoft Data Platform Stack, SQL, Azure SQL, and now Fabric as well. There are multiple initiatives like that all around the world, right? There is also something quite interesting, which is the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. Right? Last year, Microsoft did the first edition in March in Las Vegas, and then at the end of the year, the same one in Europe. Right? So now they are also promoting the Microsoft Fabric Community event for early April 2025. That's going to be the second edition in where you can learn from experts from Microsoft. You can learn from MVPs, right? And this is a community event. It's not free, definitely, right? But it's the way to go if you want to engage with the community and you want to learn more about Fabric, right? You can do workshop on end-to-end presentation. If you are focusing in machine learning, there's going to be workshop targeting machine learning, same for databases, and so on and so forth, right? So
Is
to
that
me, that's the place to go.
is that the one that called Fabricon or something, or in Vegas?
Fabcom, Fabcom.
Okay. Did you went there? How is it?
No. I have some other work related activities. And actually, if you remember, last year was quite close to the MVP summit. So I went to the MVP summit instead.
Yeah, because I think it's very too close. Sometimes it's in March, sometimes it's in April.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's right after the MVP summit, actually,
okay, that's
on a
brilliant.
different location. So,
That's good. So you get to go to Vegas if it's April anyway. So because you live nearby, you live it's in the state.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I have to, just choose one. And to me, I prefer the MVP summit. I definitely
Yeah,
have it in my to-do list. Maybe for the one in Europe at the end of the year. I don't know, but in the US, the first one I won't be going. I have part of my team that went there. Some of them went to the first one in Las Vegas, some others to the one in Stockholm for the Europe edition, and they were super happy. They learned a lot. We use it on a daily basis, as I said, for production analytic projects, right? So mission critical, and well, we definitely rely a lot on our analytics in Microsoft Power.
yeah. So aside from like communities and your work, what do you do? Do you have any hobbies like in your spare time, or you
Yeah.
just community?
Well, one of my hobbies is definitely community activities, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
same.
I like to go to different events in person, mainly to network with my friends and colleagues. But beside the technology part, I'm a dad. I have two sons, which I love a lot, and I do play tennis. Right, that is the way I keep my physique more or less
Yeah.
into shape, but mainly my head.
Okay, that's brilliant. So, so before we close off this episode, I just want to find out: are you going to any other events nearby in the future? Or remember, you talk about you going to MVP Summit. Is that
Yeah.
the only one that you're going to?
No, I normally go to the past summit in Seattle. This is a community event from the PAS community. PAS is Professional Association of SQL Server, right? So it's not a Microsoft event, but since it is in Seattle, Microsoft engineers go to it, and they normally announce a bunch of things related to SQL and now related to all the Azure and Fabric stack, right? So those are my main events: MVP Summit and the PAS Summit, and hopefully in the future also the FabCon, right? Part of my team in Europe will also be going to SQL Beats that this year is in June. I won't be going there. So yeah, I mean, I love to be engaged with the community, network, learn. The main phrase of the past community that I'm part of is connect, learn, and share. Right. So definitely, this is something that I'm trying to do all the time.
Yeah, it looked like an interesting and fun community, the past one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining this episode, Javier. It's a pleasure of having you. So it's in 3 weeks. It's going to be on social media, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.